Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Thank you guys so much for being here. I want to say a big welcome to all of my new subscribers. I'm so glad you guys are here and I truly appreciate you subscribing and coming back to my videos. Today we're going to be doing a video that has been requested by a few of you guys. I did mention in a previous video that I could touch on Begonia Care and what I do to treat and prevent powdery mildew forming on my begonias. A few of you said that you would like to see that type of video, so here we are. I don't know if you guys have noticed yet or not, but I do now have a microphone. I've actually had this mic for a little over a week now, but unfortunately the adapter that I had ordered to connect this with my iPhone, it wouldn't work, so I had to get a new adapter and it's just been a whole thing. This is my first time trying out the mic. I really hope that the quality is good. I hope you guys can hear me okay. If you don't care, let me know in the comments. And thank you guys so much for sticking around. For those of you who said you've had a hard time hearing me, I'm so sorry. Hopefully this will fix that issue. Here with me, I do have a few of my begonias. I am currently battling the powdery mildew. Since I brought in the begonias from Hertz, if you guys seen that unboxing, I have been dealing with a little bit of a powdery mildew issue, and I do believe it's from those begonias. So let's go ahead and jump into lighting. So for my begonias, I keep them in medium indirect light. They do really well in bright indirect light also, as long as you're not giving them direct sun. They do have very thin, delicate leaves, so that will scorch their leaves. But I found that mine do really well and actually bloom and seem the happiest whenever I give them medium indirect light. Now for their soil mix, I do mix up a pretty well draining soil. I don't necessarily use as much orchid bark and things like that as I do with a lot of, say, my aeroids, my philodendrons and things like that, because begonias don't like to necessarily dry out as much as a lot of other plants may. A regular indoor potting soil should be fine, and then I just add quite a bit of perlite to that. I definitely wouldn't use like a cactus mix or anything that's going to drain too quickly, because I have found that my begonias do prefer to stay a little bit more on the moist side. For fertilizing, I fertilize most of my houseplants every watering. As long as they're still continuing to grow, I will go ahead and continue to fertilize, with the exception of my begonias. So I tip my begonias and my calatheas, I should say. So those are two types of plants that I don't fertilize quite as often, just because they are more sensitive to chemicals and they're just more delicate plants in general. So I would typically fertilize my begonias probably about once a month with a natural organic fertilizer at full strength. Watering. Now when it comes to watering my begonias, this is where you have to be careful, because a lot of people will tell you, and I even said it already in this video, that begonias prefer to be a little bit more on the moist side compared to completely dry. And though that is true, it is also very easy to overwater begonias and completely rot them away. So you really have to find a happy medium there. So I would say if we're using my moisture meter, I typically water my begonias whenever it's to a 3 or 4. I don't allow my begonias to go down completely dry and stay that way, because then I will start noticing some damage on the leaves, or they'll start dropping leaves, particularly my more cane-like begonias. So yeah, I would say that I let them dry almost completely out, and then I will go ahead and give them a good thorough watering. Hey guys, if the angle is a little bit different, I'm sorry, but I just realized that I forgot to include something, so I wanted to go ahead and throw it in. Whenever it comes to watering my begonias, I do water them with distilled water. I would not recommend using tap water on your begonias. Your Rex begonias may be okay with that. You may not notice any damage. They might not fuss or fret too much about tap water, but whenever it comes to your more delicate and sensitive types of begonias, such as your cane and eyelash varieties, I definitely would recommend using either a distilled water, or if you have a filter or something like that that you use. Like I have a 0 water pitcher one of the giant ones that I will be sharing with you guys in an upcoming video. And that's what I used on the majority of my plants. But I would definitely recommend some type of either purified or distilled water whenever it comes to watering your begonia. Something else I'd also like to throw in when it comes to watering is be very careful not to get water on the leaves of your begonias. I have found that they do not like that at all. So you could probably get away with bottom watering. I don't personally bottom water my begonias, but I have heard many people do. I'm just very careful and cautious whenever I go into water, that I put the spout of my watering can as close to the soil as I can. I'm just sure not to splash any of that water up onto the leaves. I certainly wouldn't dump the water in from way up here and just kind of let it pour down all over your leaves. You know what I mean? I have noticed that if begonia leaves get wet and stay wet for too long, you can start getting like brown spots, and that does leave room for bacteria and things like that to then form. Now for humidity, as most of you may know, begonias are humidity loving plants. So these are two types of begonia that I have, and these are the most common begonia that you will find in big box stores and nurseries. I would say that the Rex begonia are probably the more easygoing. Rex begonia can handle the least amount of light between Rex, eyelash, and cane begonia. This is what I found. Rex can handle some pretty low light situations. Also noticed that my Rex begonias are not nearly as finicky whenever it comes to humidity. They don't really care either way. Whereas my cane and eyelash begonias basically demand it. If they're not getting the humidity they need, I will get a lot of those crisping leaves. So this cute little Rex begonia, I have no idea the varieties of the Rexes either, but this one I have had now for a year, and I actually rescued this little begonia from a Lowe's. It was on the discount rack, and it was very sad. I brought it home and had to cut away most of its leaves and start it over basically. And this plant had gotten very full up until just about 2 months ago. It was very full, it was blooming, it has the cutest little petite pink blooms I've ever seen. Whenever I was hit with the bacterial issues, this is one of the plants that ended up having those issues, and I lost a ton of foliage. But since treating her and getting rid of that, she's grown back really nicely. So all of the leaves that we are seeing now is new growth, and there's more little ones popping up every day. But these leaves are just so beautiful. I love the pink shimmer that they have to them. It's a very beautiful plant, so I'm definitely super stoked that this girl was able to pull through and come back for me. This is a newer Rex begonia. I haven't had this one a super long time, but it's also very pretty, and it's probably not going to pick up on camera, but the green around the leaves here actually has kind of like a shimmer to it. It almost looks like someone painted glitter within the leaves. It's very pretty. So basically, if you are looking to collect a type of begonia that doesn't require an insane amount of humidity and that can handle a little bit lower light, definitely go with the Rex varieties. There's so many different cultivars, there's so many different hybrids of Rex begonia. There's really something for everyone. The types of begonias that I have found to be the most finicky whenever it comes to humidity in particular would have to be the more eyelash style begonias. So I have two here that I recently unboxed from Hertz, and they looked okay despite the terrible packing job that Hertz did when I received them. But the following days after unboxing them and having them in my home, they started to develop kind of like a powdery mildew, and their leaves started to crisp and mush and fall off. This tiny little begonia red planet here is growing back. It lost most all of its foliage, but it does have some tiny little cute new growth coming in, so I'm really hoping that this one will be okay. I have treated all of my begonias, and we'll get into that in just a moment. So I actually picked up this little cloche thing, this little dome at Target not too long ago. I've been looking everywhere, thrift stores, places like that, and I've not been able to find one big enough. But I did find this one, and I picked it up for this little eyelash begonia here that I got from Hertz. And this is Begonia Bethlehem Star. This one has also been having a lot of issues since I unboxed it. Unfortunately, I've lost a ton of foliage, still picking leaves out of the pot that have just kind of withered up and died on me. But I'm hopeful that it will come back and it will be happy. So I have placed it in this dome, trying to increase the humidity and just bring it back basically. Now, my favorite variety of begonia would have to be the more cane-like begonias. So this is my little begonia pink flamingo, and I love her so much. All of the begonias that I have actually produce pink blooms. So far, for all of them that has bloomed for me, they've all been pink blooms. But this is one of my favorite begonias of all time. And this plant was hit really hard over the summer with powdery mildew and lost a ton of leaves, along with this one. I'm sorry, this is Begonia Pink Flamingo. This is Begonia My Special Angel. I completely got that mixed up. But both of these were hit really hard with the powdery mildew over the summer and lost a ton of foliage. Since then, I really hadn't had any issues with the powdery mildew, and both of these plants were growing back really, really nicely. This one had been in bloom since the summer, since its treatment. So it quit putting out a ton of leaves because it just was in constant bloom for like the last 4 months. But it finally stopped blooming about a month or so ago, I would say. And once it stopped blooming, it started putting off tons of new leaves. So as we can see here, this is a new leaf, this is a new leaf, this is a new leaf, here's a new leaf. So there's actually new growth coming up out of the pot itself, which is so cute. And it actually had 3 more leaves aside from these that were their largest and oldest leaves until recently. So after, as I mentioned, my Hertz unboxing, days following that unboxing, I started noticing the begonias from Hertz having issues with their leaves and foliage. So I did go ahead and treat them. And then I started noticing my beautiful pink flamingo had a powdery mildew. And I was like, man, it's finally growing back beautifully since its last outbreak. And here we go again. But really quickly, another point I wanted to add that goes along with the humidity is that though these plants do love higher humidity, they do need higher humidity, I would not recommend misting your begonias. Because as I mentioned earlier in this video, they really do not like to have their leaves wet. So that is one thing I will say. Misting your begonia can cause a lot of leaf damage on their delicate leaves, and it can also stir up the perfect breeding ground for bacteria and fungus and things like that. So I would definitely steer clear when it comes to misting your begonias. If you don't have a humidifier and you don't want to invest in one, you could try things like grouping your begonias together with other plants. You could try putting them on pebble trays. I know a lot of people swear by that. You could try setting little vessels of water just kind of all around your plants, and that water will then evaporate around the plants. And I also want to say, if you have high humidity for your begonias, you definitely want to make sure you have airflow. You want to have good air circulation because, again, high humidity and stagnant air is the perfect breeding ground for bacteria and fungus and all that nasty stuff that we really just want no part of. But now let's move on and talk about the powdery mildew, how to treat it. What do? You've noticed your begonias are having blackening on the leaves with a white coating over it or a white film or any type of damage to the leaves that's not due to lack of humidity. What are you going to do? So I'm going to share with you this stuff that I have always used for my begonias, and it's always worked really well. And this is by Safer Grow, and it's called Mildew Cure. It's a fungicide for powdery mildew control specifically. The active ingredient in this stuff is actually garlic oil. So I can say this stuff smells like pure garlic. It is very, very strong. I personally like the smell of garlic, so it doesn't bother me whatsoever, but it does have a very garlicky odor to it. I first heard about this stuff on another plant YouTuber's channel. Her name is Danielle Tells, and she has a lot of begonias and like Christmas cactus and things like that. But she recommended this stuff, and so I got it and I tried it whenever I had my first experience with powdery mildew, and it works really well for that, guys. I can say that whenever it comes to like other types of bacterial leaf spot or fungal issues, this doesn't do a whole lot, but if it is specifically powdery mildew, this takes care of it. So the kind that I got here, I think I got for around $20 on Amazon. This is a concentrate. You do have to mix this with water, so you just shake it up really well. You mix 3 tablespoons of this and 1 gallon of water in your spray bottle, and you just completely saturate your plants with it. You let that dry, and then I repeat that typically 3 times over the course of probably 2 to 3 weeks. I repeat that at least 3 times, and that does the trick typically. Like I said, whenever I was dealing with the bacterial leaf spot, that's a little bit different. I didn't notice any improvement in my plants whenever I tried this particular fungicide. So I was then turned on to this stuff, and this is by Bonide. I've actually been using a lot of different products by Bonide. I think they're a wonderful brand. And this is just a liquid copper fungicide. This is magic in a bottle, basically. Now this stuff is a little bit pricey. I mean, so is the mildew cure, but it lasts forever. I've used this so many times and it's still full. This I got on Amazon. I get a 2-pack for 20 bucks. This is my second time purchasing the 2-pack, so I've already went through 2 bottles. I'm on my 3rd bottle now. I will forever keep this stuff handy because this is what completely eliminated the black leaf spot and the bacterial issues I was having. This stuff says it is good for black leaf spot, powdery mildew, downy mildew, blight, fruit rot, just all kinds of plant disease basically. It's really, really good stuff. The same thing as the mildew cure, I would do at least 2, preferably 3 rounds of treatment with this stuff whenever you are treating. And if you want to skip the mildew cure and just get this, because it does cover more areas, not only does it cover powdery mildew, it also covers all other types of disease and bacterial issues, I would definitely recommend it. And this stuff is already mixed. What I do, I take the plants into my bathroom, in my bathtub, I put on my rubber gloves, and I completely douse the infected plants, front of the leaf, also back of the leaf, down the stem, completely douse it, and then I will let my plants then sit in my bathtub a day or overnight, whatever it may be, to dry, and then I put them in quarantine or wherever they're going to be staying for the time being. And then usually 7 days later, I will repeat that same process, put them back in quarantine, and then another 5 to 7 days later, I'll do it once more, even though I've typically noticed that the spreading of the leaf spot or the powdery mildew has then stopped. Just to be extra cautious and extra safe, I will go ahead and treat them one last time before I put them out with the rest of my plants. And whenever I'm going through issues like this, guys, if I have plants that are showing any signs of weird damage or discoloration, anything like that on their leaves, and I know that there's no pests, I will go ahead and take them in my bathroom and treat them as well as a precaution. I've never noticed any damage on any of my plants from doing that. Whenever I bring a new begonia into my home, I will typically go ahead and treat it with some type of fungicide, just as a precaution, especially if you're ordering begonias offline. You should just go ahead and treat them anyway, because plants in general, whenever they are trapped in a box for days, they're in a dark, moist environment with absolutely no air getting to them, no oxygen. That is a really good environment for bacteria and fungus and things like that to grow. So it is just kind of a good idea to go ahead and treat your plants with some type of fungicide when you're receiving them in the mail anyway, but 100% most definitely when it comes to begonias. If you guys have been watching my videos for a while, you may remember another type of cane begonia that I had, and I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but I will put it on the screen. So I found this this plant at one of our only nurseries in my state, actually, that I'm aware of. And it was an angel wing type cane begonia, and it was beautiful. And this plant had gotten so big, it had the largest angel wing shaped leaves I've ever seen. Beautiful pink little dainty blooms. And this begonia had gotten like this tall, guys. It had gotten so tall, constantly in bloom, just like this one. But the problem was, it was one long cane, and the plant was leaning like this. So it went up and it went over. And that pot just kept getting knocked over because it was just so top heavy. So right before we came into winter, I made a very silly decision that kind of taught me a whole lot about water propagating my plants this time of year where I live, and to avoid it at all costs if you can, because I decided to chop that begonia down. I cut her down below her lowest leaf and got rid of that long stem, the long cane that was just kind of taking up space and making the plant super leggy. So I cut it and I placed the cutting in water to try and propagate it, reroot it, and then, plant it as a smaller plant that wasn't so leggy. And it immediately rotted away in the water. Before I even had a chance to know what was going on, I checked on it a couple days later, and the stem had completely rotted and all of the leaves fell off, and it was so sad. That was an awesome begonia. So I will be going back to that nursery where I picked that plant up this spring and trying to find another one, because I did really enjoy having that one in my home. And as of recently, I've really started to get more and more into begonias. So I'm really excited this spring and summer to expand my begonia collection. There's just so many interesting and beautiful varieties out there that I've never even seen before. I didn't even know existed, that I'm just now starting to stumble across on other people's channels. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's so beautiful. And I feel like now that I've kind of gotten the care down on these guys, that I'm ready to introduce some new ones to my home. Okay guys, I think that I have covered everything. I'm sure there's something that I'm probably forgetting. If you guys have any tips that you would like to add, any advice, maybe what's worked best for you and your begonias in your situation that differs from mine, go ahead and leave them in the comments. I'm sure other people would appreciate that as well as myself. I hope you guys found this video somewhat informative. I thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye.